Happy Wednesday. We are here again with our Workshop Wednesday, where today we are going to be talking about graduate school and applying and all the ins and outs and things to consider. My name is Tara Stevenson. I serve as the Dean of Student Engagement here at Flagler College. And I know that graduate school can seem like a very overwhelming and kind of an involved decision about whether that's going to be a part of our future or not, or whether it's something that we want to do, we need to do, or that we feel like we have to do. So today I'm hoping to really outline lots of ins and outs, different things to consider, all those things that are different points that may be valuable to some, may not be valuable to others. If at any point you've got questions, again, please feel free to toss them in to the comments area. I am watching us here on Instagram, as well as our Facebook pages, Twitter feeds, as well as YouTube. So let's go ahead and jump right on in and get started. We have a lot of content to cover today, and so I don't want you to get overwhelmed, or if we're going too fast through things, please go ahead and again, toss a question in there. These resources are sometimes available on our website, but if you'd like to dive more into them with your specific areas, we'd be more than happy to do that. So we've been kind of going on this journey with our workshops on all this professional development. We started with resumes, jumped into cover letters, job searching, LinkedIn. Last week, then we kind of started to travel into this graduate school, and we talked about the GRE. So now when we're applying to graduate school, we can look to see whether all of those pieces are a part of that puzzle for what looks like graduate school. The first question that everybody needs to know is graduate school right for you? You know, does your career goal require this? Does it require an advanced degree? Are you passionate about the subject? Many times we feel that, Many times we feel that we have to go into our undergraduate program, but with graduate school, we are all of a sudden able to make the decision on how much we want to invest in it. Your program is specific to a topic that you are passionate about, and it's specific to what you're hoping to invest a lot of your future into. But is it necessarily a requirement? And thinking about the timing is also going to be important, because is getting a graduate degree for your future appropriate after Flagler? Is it appropriate for your time maybe a year or two after graduation? Or is it maybe going to benefit you a little bit later on after you've gotten some real world experience? Do you know what you want to do after you graduate? Or are you feeling like, I'm not too sure what I want to do, so I'm just going to go to graduate school? That's a huge investment if you think about it, if we're just not sure what we're going to be doing. Thinking about why are you going? This is going to be a question that comes up fairly regularly. Why? Why? Do we have something really concrete and good to answer for that why? And are we excited about that why? Because your graduate program may be 1 year. It may be 2 years. It may be 3 years. It could end up being 5 or 6 years. Really thinking about, all those different factors. And then again, going back to when is the right timing for me? So there are different types of degrees that I want us to go ahead and just cover very quickly. There are graduate certificates, which are a shortened period through a specific course of study where you can gain some needed skills in areas. I think back to my own graduate program where I was going for my master's in higher education administration, and my school offered a graduate certificate in conflict management and resolution that I could have tied with my master's degree. And so any elective space that I had built in with my master's program, I could have put towards that certificate. Certificates are not always offered at every single school. There's going to be a lot of variety for those, but is your time going into those going to benefit you? And is that something that you'd like to consider maybe on its own, or do you want to have it be paired with something? Then you have that master's degree, which is a graduate degree granted through a recognized, accredited institution that shows a candidate has achieved mastery in a particular field. Time frame is typically 1 to 3 years, but of course that will differ dependent on the track you're taking, the journey you're taking, and all those things. There's also professional degrees. This prepares work for a particular profession, often meeting the academic requirements for licensure or accreditation on their own. So this would include a Juris Doctorate, a JD, law degree, a medical doctor, MD, a physician's degree, Doctor of Dental Surgery, DDS, and Doctor of Pharmacy, a PharmD. And so thinking about if there are professional degrees like that you would like to build upon a master's degree, or when you're looking at graduate schools, which we'll talk about different criteria for looking at graduate schools, do they offer kind of stepping stone programs if you are going for more of that furthering your education for perhaps a PhD or a medical degree, and a master's degree would benefit you, and they lump them together. I know that there are some graduate schools now that are pairing an MBA with a law degree. And so it's actually a dual degree that you're going for. We have the doctorate that we mentioned, and so that's up to 6 years focused on advancing knowledge through original research in an academic field. So that's typically that PhD that we hear about. You'll also hear a lot of our social sciences and humanities students will consider a PsyD, where if they're looking to more go into the teaching aspect, and those are all different things that you can consider dependent on what you want to go into. We do have Flagler graduates that go straight to a PhD program. We do have Flagler graduates that go straight into a master's program or a certificate and then build upon that. We do have students that go straight into law school or for an MBA program, or they go back after a few years. Again, there's no cookie cutter answer when it comes to graduate school. And if that's one thing that you walk away with from today, there is no cookie cut answer, because each individual graduate school will work differently, the programs will work differently, and then of course your own journey in your area is going to work differently. So let's go ahead and dive into all things to consider when you're researching and looking through your graduate schools. Let's start with specialization. And so your area of specialization will ultimately depend on your own interests, but you may also want to take into account the job market. I think this is particularly important given what we're going through right now. And so if I had to speculate, and from my different research that I've seen, hospitality tourism, that field right now is struggling through this pandemic. So is now the right time to go for a master's in that field? It may or may not be. It may be an opportunity to really hone in on best practices and research, or it may be not the right time because you can't have that practical application that you would hopefully get when that industry is going strong. Some specialties will experience growth in the future, whereas those that are currently growing may be expected to become stagnant. And of course, as we all know from COVID, the waves that go up and down and everything, we just don't know what that future is going to hold. But thinking about what type of specialization is important to you. A school and a program's ranking may be another factor that you'd like to consider. So this indicates the quality of education you will receive and the level and availability of resources. Qualities used to establish a school's ranking and how they're evaluated may be that greater resources are available. There may be a higher cost, and so then that means that it's more difficult to attend. Or it might be that there's a higher student to faculty ratio. That might all be 3 different factors that go into a highly ranked school. But that depends on where you prioritize these different factors for graduate school, because one program at one school might have a really high ranking. That same program at another school may have a lower ranking. You may think about ranking as something that's high on your priority list, whereas somebody else may not think that it's a high priority. Accreditation is our next one, which is both a status and a process. And so the status is a public notification that an institution or program meets the standards of quality set forth by an accrediting agency. The process for accreditation is in achieving recognition by the accrediting agency. The institution program is committed to self-study and external review to enhance the education. I cannot stress this enough for those students that are potentially looking to go into mental health counseling. We see a lot of Flagler students and graduates that want to further their education in that field. And we do have the discussion with them on whether that program is accredited and whether it's accredited within their field and will provide them with the proper resources that they need to be successful within that profession. Program size, this is always a really interesting thing to discuss because I think school size can play into this and can really create this seesaw of what size means to people. So large graduate programs may be at well-known schools. There may be numerous faculty members that you could have a chance to connect with. A variety of course offerings will obviously be at a larger school, as we know that with Flagler at a smaller school, the classes that we see in the catalog aren't always offered every single semester because we are smaller. Sometimes the best research resources may be available at a large graduate program. Now, a small graduate program may have an abundant amount of opportunities for graduate assistantships, which we will dive into in a little bit if you haven't heard of that term. But you might also get that opportunity for individual attention and mentoring with the small graduate program. I encourage everyone to really consider the size of the institution and then the size of the program. You may look at going to a school that has 40,000 students overall, but your graduate program has a cohort of 25 students. You may look to go to a 10,000 student population school, but their graduate program that you're looking at has a cohort of 50, or it has a cohort of 6. And those are all different things that you need to consider. Coming from Flagler, we are a smaller school, so obviously you made the choice to come here to Flagler because of a variety of different reasons. But do you benefit more from the learning environment of a smaller class like we have here at Flagler? I will consistently go back to my own graduate school experience as we're having these discussions. And my school was extremely large. It is probably closer to 50,000 now than when I attended. However, my program probably had about 20 students that started in the cohort with me, and there was another 20 that were in the year prior to me. And so even though I was at a large institution, I didn't feel like I had that large school experience because I was surrounded by the same students that were in that cohort. And that was something that was important to me. Location, let's go ahead and jump into that factor to consider. Do you want to live there? Right now, there are a lot of online programs, so obviously location could be wherever if you're looking at an online program. If you're looking at an in-person school, you're living there. So what made you want to live here at Flagler and live here in St. Augustine? And is there something different that you're looking for in your graduate program? Some students may have allergies or asthma, other health issues that could become aggravated in different locations. Look at the website of the city or the community. They could really give you insight to what is the weather like? Do you thrive in an environment that has seasons? Do you thrive in an environment that's mostly sunny? Do you thrive in a city where you've got lots of skyscrapers or public transportation? Do you thrive maybe more out in the country? Another example, I remember considering a school that I loved their campus. I loved their program. I loved the graduate assistantship. I loved the people that I was meeting with. It was out in the middle of nowhere. And for me, I could not balance enough of that for it to be a program that I would enjoy living at for 2 or 3 years because I like to consider my surrounding community. People, you're going to be with these people for 2 years. And so what is that culture like? What is the response like for interacting with people? Are you looking for that from your graduate program? And that could absolutely evolve as you are in your graduate program, as you may find, you know what, I would really thrive on the opportunity to connect more with my cohort or more with people that are outside of my cohort. And so thinking about the personalities and the professional ideas, and are they compatible with yours? Talk to people as much as possible as you're doing your research for graduate schools. Connect with faculty, connect with current students. A lot of graduate programs will have the opportunity for you to connect with those that are currently in it. What better way to find out what they're liking and perhaps where they're not liking it as much is to connect with them or ask about their advisors. Talk to a potential advisor and get an idea about, where the future of the program is going. Are they looking to make some changes? Again, I think back to my own program, and I was there for 2 years, but the year prior and the year after I left, there were so many changes that went through that program. You may get your degree from a university, but I want you to really think about that you get your education from your advisor. So would you connect with somebody that's in that program in that capacity? A big thing that I have a lot of discussions with students and graduates when considering graduate school is the cost. And I know that that's a huge daunting factor that I always want to dive a little bit more into the conversation to help maybe alleviate some stress when it comes to cost. At the doctoral level, it could be common for a university to waive tuition requirements in addition to, or perhaps having in-state tuition if you're working with the college. There might be some grants or stipends or assistantships, again, that we're going to dive into. Is the cost, are there financial aid opportunities? I think about those students that want to go into law school. They don't want you to work your first year. And so what does that income look like as you are paying for school? What would loans look like? Are there opportunities to have loan forgiveness because of the industry or the position that you go into afterwards? So we've mentioned assistantships a couple different times, so let's dive into what that word means. And an assistantship is when you are working for or with the institution that you are at during your time as a graduate student. And so a graduate assistant, a GA, you might hear, is that overall umbrella term where you're working more within an administrative capacity, perhaps some research with an office or an area that's on campus. My graduate assistantship throughout my time in my master's program was with the Women's Resource Center. And so I committed about 20 to 25 hours per week to working in an office setting with the Women's Center and doing different programming, holding office hours, connecting with students. And that was my role as a graduate assistant. Graduate assistantships, they may help pay for tuition. They may provide a stipend, or as I like to say, the mecca might be that they help pay for tuition and offer a stipend. Each school's financial aid packages when it comes to graduate assistantships will be different. You may need to look at graduate assistantships through their financial aid website, or you may need to look at graduate assistantships through the specific program. It always goes back to that cookie cutter concept where there is no same answer for it all. Other ones that we might hear about are research assistantships. And so you would be working in a capacity with a faculty member or with a department looking at analysis, field work, lab work, writing, editing materials, looking at an overall program. And then the last one that many of us have heard about is a teaching assistant or a TA, where you would be teaching a lower level class in your program area while taking those graduate level classes yourself. And so I think in my undergraduate, my speech communication professors were considered TAs. They were teaching assistants who were also going for a master's or a PhD within communication at my institution. This is a wonderful way that if you have the skill and the ability to connect with people and to educate people, to have a little bit of cost cut down while you're going for your graduate work. I completely understand and respect that teaching is not for everyone. And so if this is something that does not excite you, we can absolutely have the discussion on, are there other opportunities for you to offset some of the costs versus just being a teacher? Another factor is the quality of life. And so things to consider: will you be bringing a significant other or a spouse? And so what does the employment look like for that partner? What does the housing look like for that partner? Are there family members that are going to be coming with you? Perhaps there's the availability of childcare. And so is your program only at night? Is your program during the day? When do classes meet? Employment opportunities for after you get your degree. Think about your investment. It's that ROI, the return on investment. You are spending the time with this institution because you're hoping for something in return, is you want to be the best candidate for a profession afterwards. Health insurance, is this something that's being offered by the school or not, or do they have a partner that they could work with you on? What's the local cost of living? And so you may have the tuition and cost of the program aspect completely down pat, but you have to think about your housing. And is there on-campus graduate housing? Is there local housing that would work best for you? And it's all different things to consider. How close will you be? Is there going to be a commute? Is there public transportation, or is there driving that you would have to do? Could you commute with somebody and carpool? I don't want you to get too overwhelmed as we're talking through these, but hopefully it's just, again, getting some of those juices flowing up here as we consider all different things. As I mentioned, the weather is huge. I remember doing a graduate internship in New York City and hearing so many students talking about how the weather, or just the views of looking out their window at another brick wall, wasn't conducive to their learning style. And I truly think that that's important when considering, because you are living there. You're not just in the classroom 24/7. What's the culture like? What's the recreation like there? Are there opportunities to connect with your community when you're not on campus? Are local flea markets important to you? Are shopping opportunities important to you? Are, athletics or concerts, different things like that? Is that being available within your community? So next we're going to chat about the application process and what that looks like. What program should I choose? The rule of 5 is always going to be something that I support, is that you have a list of 5 schools that you're considering. And then I want you to pull the application information for all of those. And so what are we going to consider with these applications? What are the admission standards, faculty research, grad requirements? I'm a big believer in, let's look at deadlines. Have we enough time to apply? And have we potentially missed ones? Is there an opportunity to defer admittance if we're just not ready and we've had to apply so early? Items that you may or may not need for an application to a graduate school is your undergraduate transcripts and your GPA. That's probably a given that you'll always need that. Test scores, this would be your GRE, your GMAT, or your LSATs. Some schools require them and some schools don't. I don't believe that that's a reflection of the program itself. It's just their individual philosophy as a school or as a program. Really think about your timing for the GRE, as we talked about last week in our workshop. If we do need to have our GRE scores in by a certain time for that application, how can we work backwards with scheduling the GRE? I also really encourage people, I have had some individuals that I've worked with who will come in and say, I am only looking at programs that do not require a graduate test. I would encourage you to push yourself a little bit more. If there's a program that you know would be an amazing fit for you and they do require the test, how could we work through those obstacles for you to take that test and then feel really good about it? A personal statement and or supplemental essays may or may not be a part of the application. I have seen it anywhere from questions that ask you to explain something in 500 words or less, or you might have about 3 to 5 pages to answer a certain amount of questions. Always, always, always look at what the prompt is for these essays that they're asking you to submit. That is the easiest way in the application to take out a candidate because they didn't take the time to answer the prompt that was given specifically for their program. You may or may not have to put a resume or a CV in there. We've talked a whole lot about resumes, and a CV is a curriculum vitae where we are highlighting more of who you are within academia. If a program asks for a resume or CV, then you could submit any of those. If a program asks for just a resume, then obviously we would go with a resume. And if a program asks specifically for a CV, then we would go specifically for a CV. Letters of recommendation, these may be ones that you have to upload yourself or that you have to mail in yourself, or I'm seeing a huge trend in that a lot of programs now have systems in place where they can automate a recommendation via email to those that are your references. A graduate school interview may or may not be in your future depending on what they are looking for. And then application fees. These will all be different. Every single thing that I just covered is completely different for every school. You may have, we may be able to say, okay, the basics that I will need are transcripts, some sort of resume, perhaps a portfolio or a statement of purpose, and then recommendations. But we don't know what each school is going to require within those little areas there. So what should you include in that statement of purpose? Let's talk a little bit about that. Typically, you'll see 3 areas that are being asked in there is, why do you want this program and the school? What experience do you have that prepares you for that program? And then your goals and how that program fits into your future career goals. That is a very high level look at 3 themes that we will typically see over and over again in those statements of purpose or essays that are required of the applications. However, look at those prompts and what they are asking for, because they may be asking more for motivation and experience, or they may be asking, what faculty member would you like to work underneath? They may be asking why this particular school and why not any other. We might have a tendency to want to generalize these and use them over and over again for schools. However, we need to look at it just as a hiring organization when we've had those discussions, is they want to know why you are the best applicant and why you would benefit their program and make the most of it. And so why should they take you if you're applying to lots of other schools? Make it specific to them. So we've talked about some financial aid. Let's look at now our timeline and a beneficial timeline for what this could look like. I usually recommend that if we have those current students considering graduate school, let's take the summer before graduation to start this timeline. This is just a recommendation, and it could be sped up, it could be lengthened, it could happen after you've graduated, it could happen while you're in school. And so let's think about that summer, the July-August timeframe. Let's research schools. Let's think about who could be writing our letters of recommendation and providing references for us. In September, we want to look at what those entrance exams look like, the GRE, the test, or at least start to schedule them. As we talked about last week with the GRE, take it early, because if you do really well on it and you're happy with your scores, they're good for 5 years. If we didn't do as well as we were hoping to, when you take it early enough, that gives you enough time within the application time frame for these programs that you may be able to retake it and then resubmit your scores. Finalize those school choices. We can absolutely have a big, huge list of them, and then we can start to whittle down unless you are looking to apply to a whole lot. And then you can always meet with our office. I regularly will have student or alumni appointments that occur every week. And it's our check-in. I could be kind of like an accountability partner, and that could be anybody that's in our office. This is all a very overwhelming process, and so many different things that we have talked about in just 29 minutes that we've been here today. And so why not talk it through with somebody to really see, like, what are my different factors? Where am I going? And how do I get everything that's up here articulated in a nice, well way? October, let's go ahead and request those letters of recommendation. Typically, when you are asking for a letter of recommendation or a reference, you know that that individual is so excited to serve in that capacity for you. If you're a little bit unsure, you're going to go ahead and find somebody new. When you are asking for a letter of recommendation, the majority of people will ask for a copy of your resume or your CV. And so if you can supply that for them, it's a wonderful way for them to put some of that stuff into that letter and to also reference the experiences that you've had. Begin working on those personal statements. We are thinking about October timeframe, and so our deadlines might be coming up. And so we need to really start working on them. And then again, let's update that resume and CV. November, ordering transcripts. That can all be done through the registrar's office. Whether you are a current student or you are an alumni of the college, you can contact the registrar's office. I believe they might have a form online, but please don't quote me on that. You can always reach out to them directly for your transcripts. Many times when we are applying to schools, we are a current student, and so they are asking for your unofficial transcript as of right now, and then they will request another final transcript after you've graduated. Complete application forms. Let's start to open those up and see what needs to be put all into it. And then if you have the ability, send the application in early. And again, I realize that this timeline may or may not work for everybody when it comes to that application. And so if that needs to kind of be truncated and put into winter break or over Thanksgiving break or something like that, you really need to look at what the timeline is best for you. Some schools may have a deadline that is effectively right before you start the program. I don't think that we should necessarily wait that long. If there is the opportunity to work on it a little bit earlier, think about the stress and pressure that is all of a sudden lifted off of you. So December timeframe, let's look at those grants, fellowships, assistantships, see what those timelines are like, because they may or may not require some interviews throughout the spring semester. And then fill out the FAFSA form. Always, always, always look at whatever deadlines and specific information that they have on there. I'm not going to know what the specific deadlines are, and so it might be better to look at when that needs to be completed sooner rather than later. And then spring semester, again, you go ahead and you prepare for any interviews. Assess your financial aid packages. And so are there multiple options and choices? Make your decision and then pay that deposit. These all, and I can't stress this enough, have their own individual timelines, their own individual packages, their own individual processes. I think for law school, you're able to do more of like a common app thing. Today, we're focusing a whole lot more on traditional graduate programs, but it always kind of hurts me internally if we have students that have dream schools or ones that we start making a list and we've missed deadlines, and we have to start taking those schools off of our lists. How can we prepare a little bit early so that we feel really good and confident? We've got lots of time to prepare for a move, prepare for a change in life, anything like that. Lots of online resources that we can consider. Again, we've got GRE resources, Princeton Review for the GRE as well. Gradschool.com, it sounds like a pretty basic and generalized website, but it is one of my favorites because it is a way to search for graduate schools, and it will show you what is a hybrid program and in-person program. We have some amazing graduate school guides in our office, so if you are on campus and I can provide that to you, please let us know. It's like Google in a book, and so if we're just starting out in this search and considering lots of different things, pick up one of these books and start to highlight schools that may work out well for you, rip out pages and tab things, and then go to the computer. If we just go to the computer and we go to Google and we go ahead and do a search for public history programs, it's going to come up with anything and everything and be super overwhelming. So why not start with a pretty reputable source, and then we go to the computer and to some of these other websites. Graduateguide.com is another good one. usnews.com if you really want to know more about the rankings and specific information for schools. Funding graduate school, there's a lot of different resources out there as well for it. Lastly, my type A personality always likes this, and I know that we all kind of operate in different ways, but I do always recommend creating a spreadsheet or a folder or some way to help organize this stuff. When I'm working with students and alumni on looking at graduate schools, my first thing that I will always do is when they have identified a school and a program, I go to that program's website and I actually print out the application requirements and deadlines and everything right from there to create my individual schools packet. I put the deadline real big on the top and highlight it so that I see it, and that then creates my organizational thing as well as my to-do list. If you like a good spreadsheet, go ahead and put them into a spreadsheet. Add the graduate school, the degree, when's the deadline for that application, what are the requirements, is there a fee? Right now, I am hearing a lot about graduate schools that are waiving fees or perhaps waiving the GRE during this time. What does it hurt to ask or to do a little bit of research into that? Put some links in that spreadsheet. Did you submit your application? And then what are the different updates? It can really help keep you organized as you're trying to navigate a bunch of different areas. Whew. So that is a lot of the information that I have about Graduate School 101. Obviously, this is a workshop that we could take an entire semester to talk about just in and of itself. We can do so many different areas to dive into, and I know that your individual programs and your individual goals can make a generalized workshop like this a little bit harder to digest. But if there is any way that we can help you along that journey, please let us know, because that's what we're here for. And whether you're working with us or somebody else, I met with a student earlier today who said that she was meeting with another student who was going through this process, and the two of them were kind of doing it together. And I thought, what a great way to have some accountability. So our co-curricular word for the day, let's just go with graduate schools. You know, I will eventually work on the creativity for those co-curricular words, but careerdevelopment@flagler.edu. Go ahead and email us, graduate schools, and I'll be sure to add you into the system for earning co-curricular credit. As always, thank you so much for joining me today, and I do hope that you've walked away with a few different nuggets or things to think about and consider during your graduate school application journey. As we finish up October with our breast cancer awareness and domestic violence awareness months, I know that we are gearing up for some new holidays and some new seasons. I do wish you all continued health and safety. Don't forget to vote. We now have less than a week, and it's an exciting time right now, and definitely have your voice be heard. If we can help in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Next week, the topic will be interviewing. It'll be pretty generalized, but we'll go over some different tips for you. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the Wednesday. Talk to you soon. Bye.